why don't you want to do it? And she said, Dad, can you afford to send me? And I said, not now, but when I get out of here and start making some money, I said, and she said, I don't want to do it because I probably would win. Not because of your names or your influence, but because of the life I've been given. And when you won that scholarship, Dad, you were just a kid from Arkansas, it changed your life. It is wrong for someone like me to take a scholarship that won't change my life. It should go to someone's life will change. And I couldn't wait to tell Hillary, I said, you know, we must have done something right. Because you want all of our children, I think, not that you want them to be ambitious and all that, but you want them to have enough space in that brain of theirs to be other directed too, to care about others and to understand how they stand in the time. So I was pretty proud. She just cringes when I tell this story.
Don't tell anybody that
No,
Troy was good.
she doesn't like me talking about it, but I'm telling you, that night I went in and I told her mother, I said, if we never hit another lick in our lives, we have done one thing that is worthy. And I told her what Chelsea was done. I was overwhelmed. I'm still pretty overwhelmed by them. You know, she's got twice as many degrees as either of us do. She's written more books than we have. She's now going to have 3 times as many kids as we do. I think, you know, she just gets up every day with a list and marks through it. One other thing I've whipped my parents to do. I told her one day about a year ago, Ted, I said, you know, when you were in high school, briefly, you thought you knew more than your parents did about everything. I said, alas, it is finally true. Which is what I think we all want to be able to say about our kids.
Okay. If the adage from your war room is true that it's the economy stupid, how hard is it going to be to retake the White House?
Put that to one side and let's just think about this and it is the economy, it's always the economy, but that's not the only reason that we should elect a president, or in this case, retire one. And Bill, who coined the phrase, "Is the economy stupid?" and had the great economic expansion that he presided over and absolutely contributed to when he was president, understands this probably better than anybody. So I want him to chime in about it. But I just make a couple of points. First, we are a long way from when this election actually happens. We are just at the beginning. It seems like maybe it's been going on longer than it has, but we are just in the process of, setting the table, figuring out what is going to happen, who's going to emerge, what's going to be the most effective themes and messages about it. And so there is a lot yet that we have no way of predicting, and to some extent, that has to do with the unpredictability of the current administration, what they are willing to do, what they fail to do. For example, let us say that they are successful, let us hope not, but let us just for the sake of argument say they are successful in this outrageous and cruel effort they have undertaken to convince the courts to repeal the Affordable Care Act, which would mean not only the 20 million plus people who get their health insurance from these exchanges that were set up under it, but it would also mean everybody with a pre-existing condition, about 180 million people. All bets are off about your coverage. It would mean young people who have been on their parents' policies. All bets are off about your coverage because you're no longer eligible. The list goes on. So yes, maybe the economy is still pumping along, but all of a sudden you've got tens of millions of Americans who are much less secure because their health care is gone. We don't know what is going to happen. And so it's important to keep your eye on the whole landscape as it is moving forward. And I think it's also critical to understand that, as I've been telling candidates who have come to see me, you can run the best campaign, you can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you. And that, my friends, has nothing to do with the economy, does it? And so part of our challenge is to understand what it will take to put together not just the popular vote, but the Electoral College win that we must have for 2020. But I have something else to say about that, but let me just ask Bill to add something about the economy, because he studies the figures and he is deep into what's going on underneath the headlines.
Well, first of all, I want to echo the most important thing Hillary said, which is election's a long way away and nobody really knows what's going to happen. But I think here's what we know. We know that we know that there are a lot of people who would give a different answer today than they did 2 years ago to the question that Donald Trump asked that helped him more with the Electoral College than Make America Great Again. Make America Great Again won the nomination. What won the Electoral College was what have you got to lose? That is, it was the constant smears and interventions and distortions and people who really didn't know. Well, there's a lot of people who know what they have to lose now. And there are things that people are not automatons. There are things besides economics. Secondly, when I ran against the President George H.W. Bush in '92, a lot of people thought I was nuts. His approval rating was over 70%, and they thought the economy was pretty good, and besides, he had won the first Gulf War. But I knew that the numbers told a different story because incomes were stagnant and poverty was rising among people who were working. Now, I saw the other day, I spent a lot of time studying this stuff, that we are at a 7-year high in the number of Americans that are 3 months or more behind on their car payments. Now that's a pretty good indicator that there's, not everything's just hunky-dories. First of all. Secondly, the president is very good at claiming credit when the sun comes up in the morning. And I say that, it's almost an awesome thing, and this press apparatus behind them they're good at it too. So the New York Post, which is the sort of house organ of the White House, had an amazing headline the other day. It was President Trump had been president 2 years and 1 month, or 25 months. And as God is my witness, we just got the job report, and the headline was, Trump recovery enters 100th month. And then I noticed he was at one of his rallies, and they changed the build the wall phrase to finish the wall. And they hadn't laid the first brick, I don't think. So somebody said, well, heck, there's hundreds of miles of reinforced fencing that was there under previous people. And so, well, let's just take that. So you can't tell what's going to happen between now and then. I think the most important thing is for us to have an inclusive economic policy, to have a modern infrastructure policy, to have a humane, decent, effective immigration policy, to have an aggressive plan to combat climate change that will start new businesses and create new opportunities and build a better future. In other words, let's talk about what we're going to do for the American people and not just get overly obsessed. And then I agree with what Hillary said on the Mueller report. There are committees in the House of Representatives with the responsibility to look into the unanswered questions. Let them do it and back them all the way. But the rest of the people in Congress, including the 40 who won seats held by Republicans, should be supported when they offer ideas that will actually make your life better. And so that's what I think. And I think all these candidates that are running for president should have a chance to say what they're going to do and should get a good listen from us. And we should start thinking about how we're going to build a better future and really be serious about it. I think, you know, every now and then the American people get a fever and they're in a snit and everybody's full of resentment and nobody can think. You know, I was raised to believe that anybody who tries to keep you mad is not your friend. Because you don't make very good decisions when you're mad. And so that's what I think. I wouldn't overreact to any of this. Let them get out and run. They give 20 more will run. Let them run. Listen to what they have to say. But remember, the people hire Democrats to help people, to build things, to make something good happen. We're never going to be as good at bad-mouthing people as they are. And it's taking them down and wrecking things and, you know, all that kind of stuff. That's what they do. So, and I say that as a guy, you know, I've become very good friends with President Bush and his father, and I loved his father. By the time he passed away, his friendship was one of the great blessings that last since I left the White House in my life. But they are, the people running the show now are not like that. The best thing I do to try to counter that, President George W. Bush and I run a leadership program together that's basically 50% Democrats, 50% Republicans, and we go to his library, my library, the LBJ library, his dad's library, and all the people in the program have to have a project, and then they work together. And then we meet with them, and then we have a graduation. And it's funny, at the graduation, this is what I wish we would have in this campaign. At the graduation, the Republicans come up to me, and the Democrats come up to him, and thank us because they didn't realize there were any, by God, three-dimensional real human beings on the other side that they could work with. I mean, that is a tragic commentary on the world that has been created. A world that is profitable for people who make something out of it, but it's a lousy way to run a railroad. So anyway, that's what I think. I think let them all run and let the people who have jurisdiction over the investigations pursue them, and let everybody else do something good for somebody. That's what I think. Think about the future.
The only thing I want to add to that, because it's one of my obsessions, and I referenced it earlier when I said what I told candidates. The Mueller report could not be clearer. The Russians interfered in our election, and Trump obstructed justice, okay? It's not looking backwards and saying, okay, that's what happened back then. What's really important about that, if you read what is written in it, is that it's going to happen again. That's right. And, you know, this is what is so maddening to me, because we have a president who will not defend the United States of America against a foreign adversary's attack. And there is no doubt, and don't take it from me, the Trump-appointed FBI director, Christopher Wray, last week said the Russians are in our electoral systems and they will be active in 2020. Now, that is as clear a warning, backed up by all of the investigation in the Mueller report, that we could ever have. And yet, you have a president talking to Putin and not raising it at all. In fact, laughing about the absolutely conclusive evidence that is laid out there, the indictments that have been issued against Russians who actually did the work against our country. So my bottom line is very clear. We have to, as Americans, figure out how we're going to defend our election system without the help of our federal government. That is a very tough assignment, and that's why I'm telling all the candidates, you know, Godspeed and good luck, have fun out there, it's a great experience. However, we've got to keep raising the public awareness of what is going on as we speak that could undermine our next election. So I'm going to keep talking about it. I'm going to keep trying to raise the awareness.
Can we go back to immigration for a second? You know that when I'm not acting, I'm doing ocean advocacy, and you have been so helpful personally with what I'm doing, but also you've been working on these issues your entire life. But when I turn on the TV and I see immigration stories and what's happening at the border, my heart breaks. What do you do for an immigration policy? What is there an answer or a beginning of an answer?
Yes, and in fact, you know, one of the areas that we had bipartisan agreement on in the Senate when I was there, alongside at that time, your two senators, Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Boxer, was a bipartisan bill that was passed in the United States Senate in 2007. And it was designed to try to make sense of this broken immigration system. And it was agreed upon, which is hard to do about anything, especially something as complicated and controversial. George W. Bush said he would sign the bill, and then we could not get a vote in the Republican-led House. And the reason we couldn't get a vote is because John Boehner, who was the speaker, wouldn't bring it up for a vote. And so there is the outline of an agreement that could have incredibly positive effects on the lives of the people who are living here, particularly the dreamers, who deserve to have the uncertainty and the fear taken away, but also others who have built their lives, who have contributed to their communities, who have paid taxes, which has helped to keep the Social Security system afloat, and would end the inhumane treatment of people at our border. So there could be a deal, especially now with a Democratic-led House. But unfortunately, this administration and too many Republicans would rather have a political issue than a problem solved. And that's why we are at this impasse. And just like you, Ted, when I see what is being done in the name of the United States of America, the cruelty, the mean-spiritedness, the snatching of children from the arms of their parents, and then not only that, as bad as that is, the losing of children because there is no system to track them so that they can then be returned eventually to their families. This is not our country. This is a political effort to try to win points and win votes. And there is no doubt in my mind. Remember, right before the 2018 election, remember all the talk about the caravan? The caravan was coming. I mean, honest to goodness, if you watched Fox News, you would think that, you know, the walls were being breached and, you know, they were at your back door. It was outrageous. And yet it was done to whip up people. It didn't work in 2018, but it will be back. And Part of the problem now is there are legitimate concerns about the many people who are coming to the border, concerns about their health and safety and concerns about overwhelming our system. So if you were serious about dealing with it, you would be increasing the number of immigration judges by hundreds. You would be moving them to the border. You would be processing cases. You would be keeping track of people. You would not be separating families. You would make decisions about people's asylum applications. You would have a normal and humane effort to deal with this problem.
Let's just, God forbid that we should mention politics, but let's lay the level out. I was grateful that President Bush, this is over a decade ago, said he'd sign that bill. Okay, so I'm an ex-president, right? I endorsed it because I knew it was the best we could do. John Boehner wouldn't sign it because the majority of his House wouldn't vote for it. They wouldn't vote for it because they don't want any of these immigrants to be put on a path to citizenship. They claim that they're undocumented, but they don't want to document them. We haven't upgraded our immigration law since '83. That's why you have so many undocumented people here. And they don't want them documented because they don't want them to be able to vote because they think they won't vote for them. Not because they're so, wait. Not because many of them, particularly the Latinos and the Asians, not because they are so liberal, but because they are communitarian. They believe we should live together, we have mutual responsibilities to each other, and we should put our children first. And let's just, the crime rate among all immigrants, including the undocumented, is 50% lower than the crime rate of the native born. The small business formation rate among all immigrants, including the undocumented, is twice that of the native born. This whole thing has been twisted out of proportion. Now, there's a law which says that these people coming up from Central America are entitled to a hearing. And if they are coming because they've been uprooted by the drug violence with a reasonable fear of being hurt or their children being hurt, they have a right to asylum in this country. If, on the other hand, they live in another part of El Salvador, another part of Honduras, another part of Guatemala, which has been devastated economically by all this drug stuff, but it hasn't caused any legitimate fear, they have to get in line and wait like everybody else. Now, that's what you have an immigration system for, to make those factual distinctions. When Hillary was Secretary of State, we started having it. Instead of trying to make some phony issue, she sent people from the State Department to try to get into the capital of these countries. This is largely a three-country issue. To get them to register and be investigated there. Doing the humane, sensible, least expensive, least disruptive thing. Now, we want them to all look like they're invaders. And I believe it is a problem now, as Hillary said. There are too many people, we can't manage the problem. But I think it's been made worse because the administration announced they were going to cut off all aid to those countries. So now it's even harder for them to make a living and support their children because we cut off aid so they'll come to the border and then we can treat them like, well, the way we're treating them and try to scare everybody to death. It would be far less expensive and more practical than building more wall to build good temporary shelters with healthy sanitation, with a medical clinic, and then they wouldn't run off. A lot of people leave because they get tired of waiting to be processed, and they're sleeping in church basements because we don't have a place for them to stay. So you want them to stay and hang around, then build decent facilities. And then stop all this other stuff. For a pittance of that wall, you can build decent facilities, bring in, as Hillary said, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of immigration judges, and do the job. That's what you're supposed to do at a border. And stop tearing these families apart. Stop putting these kids away and go find the ones that are missing. But, you know, it's a much better issue if you have pictures of people all lined up. But it's a terrible way to run a railroad. It's a problem. Don't make everything into a name-calling identity crisis. It's a problem. Manage it. Do the job. It's an administrative problem.
I have a couple more serious questions, but I need a moment for my brain to catch up. Do you guys play Words with Friends under fake names? Because Mary and I do. Do you?
No.
Oh, you don't play at all?
No.
Okay, all right. Are you still Jeopardy geeks?
Yes, we are Jeopardy geeks.
Oh.
Yeah, and we haven't beat that guy yet, and we tried.
Yeah, we sit in our breakfast rooms
Here we
screaming our
nearly
answers.
beat him one day, and I only beat him another. We didn't quite get there, and then most days he's just out there somewhere.
Yeah. When I first met you guys, Mary said, Bill has scary brain. That was her, you're so
Yeah, it is pretty scary,
It is
yeah.
a scary brain. Okay, that was
But I would draw a big distinction. I said the other night on Rachel Maddow that I live rent-free in Donald Trump's brain, and that is not a good place to live.
It's not quite where he repealed the deduction for state and local taxes.
Okay, going back in here. Madam Secretary, can you please take us back to the day in the Situation Room when you participated on the raid on Osama bin Laden's compound and walk us through that day and the decisions that were made?